think, Jimmy, based or not based, because this was the tweet that you put out. You quote tweeted a later tweet here, because obviously Cenk got a lot of pushback to this, and a couple weeks later he says, some folks on the left seem to genuinely think that just talking to the MAGA right wing is evil.
Yeah, like you.
In this video, Jimmy Dore goes off on his experiences at the Young Turks with Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur. Jimmy Dore exposes the lies of Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian and goes into detail. With that, let's watch Jimmy Dore own Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian for their alleged dishonesty.
Well, I want to get into this here because we want to talk about this a bit today. So this was the tweet that started it all. On the 29th, Cenk Uygur was overwhelmed with optimism. I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy who won. I know now. MAGA is not my mortal enemy, and neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated. It's not just...
Is it the same establishment you took $20 million from? You mean that establishment? One of the top donors in the Democrat Party? You mean one of the guys, one of the most rich, most powerful owners of establishment corporate media, Jeffrey Katzenberg? You mean that's your enemy? Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, well, maybe he's out of money. Maybe he's his enemy now. Maybe
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. No more use to him. It's not just that the establishment candidate lost, it's that their media is mortally wounded. The source of their strength was not insipid politicians like Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden. The source of their strength was their propaganda machine, the mainstream media. Now, online media is strong enough that their oppressive monopoly on the American mind has been broken. Now we're in the jungle. They hate that. I love it.
This is hilarious.
Oh, you haven't read this thread yet?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this was the thing that kicked it all off. This uncontrolled marketplace of ideas is where I'm home. I'd rather be in the populist woods than an establishment prison. So Megan Murphy, I don't know who this is, says, I've never seen anyone jump ship faster. Shortly after Kamala lost. Gunther Eagleman, this is a MAGA account here. They haven't been defeated, and for you to assume that shows your naive nature. They still have a stronghold in the Senate, which you...
Isn't it amazing how Cenk Uygur can go from the day after the election calling Trump Hitler, Nazi, and all his supporters losers and idiots, to a week or two later going on multiple right-wing shows and talking about unifying with the right? The question, I may have even said this on here, the question I always have is, who is looking for you, Cenk, to unify the right? You've been nice to us for like 5 minutes after years of just spewing venom at the right, and now you want to be the unifier. It's like he's jockeying for a seat at the head of the class to be like a influence in the right wing or something. If you're sincere, Cenk, that's great, but this might be time to take a back seat for now. But I found myself being very naive by this. I was so used to Cenk saying just ridiculous statements, and I thought his takes were so dumb that I think when I heard him saying anything that was reasonable, I was like, hey, good for you, Cenk. But the reason I say I was naive is because this could all very well be a business decision. As a matter of fact, I think the majority of people on the right think that it is a business decision. Now, as far as Anna Kasparian, I don't know. Just her demeanor and the way she comes across in these interviews, her willingness to say, yeah, I was wrong about this. Cenk doesn't do any of that. He frames it as if the right is coming to him, not that he's leaving the left, because he can never admit defeat or being wrong or concede that he might have been thinking the wrong way. And I get a lot of pushback when I say I think Anna's a little more authentic. You know, they do work together, so maybe it's a joint effort to at least make some peace with the right because they see where the culture is shifting. But in my opinion, I don't expect this truce to last for all that long, because now Cenk's getting it from his side and the right, and it's like he doesn't have a home anymore. And as far as Anna, I have no delusions that she's going to be a right-winger anytime soon, but I do think she's she's looking at things a little more objectively now. I mean, and let's say I am right and that she is authentic. Again, she will always be a left winger, and I will disagree with her on the vast majority of topics, but I can respect someone that's willing to have a conversation and willing to call BS out, like on the far left, like, you know, some of their crazy ideas that she's touched on. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
You still ignore. You have trashed Trump and MAGA for years. Stay in your lane and accept that you and yours suffered an embarrassing defeat, Cenk. So yeah, that's the MAGA crowd that's not buying it. And then this is one of the big lib accounts, Joe, obeying in advance. People warned me you'd do this, and here you are. So really getting it from all sides, as you could have predicted. Mike Benz was ambivalent. Based? Question mark. I like that. I like that one. Maybe. Well, let's see. What do you think, Jimmy? Based or not based? Because this was the tweet that you put out. You quote tweeted a later tweet here, because obviously Cenk got a lot of pushback to this, and a couple weeks later he says, some folks on the left seem to genuinely think that just talking to the MAGA right wing is evil.
Yeah, like you.
Yeah, like you.
Yeah. You're the guy who did that. You pushed that for years and years, since 2016. They called me a right winger because I didn't look at the MAGA supporters as my enemy. I looked at my enemy as the establishment, and that they want us to be divided, just like Cenk Uygur did and Anna Kasparian at the Young Turks. And when I brought on a Boogaloo boy, who, by the way, we agreed with on at least 6 out of his 10 top issues. And why? And my whole thing was, I sell a T-shirt. Frederick Douglass said, I'll join with anyone to do good and no one to do bad. And that's been my message since at least 2016. They're not your enemy. They're your neighbor. And and that's exactly divide and conquer. And they've been pushing that. They slandered me and smeared me for years because I wouldn't because I wouldn't hate my neighbor, and I wouldn't pretend that my mother-in-law, who's a wonderful person, was a teacher her whole life. Her students loved her. She's 100% Mexican, and she supported Donald Trump. And I'm like, well, that's when I knew. I'm like, well, what does it do? Hate my mother-in-law? I love my mother-in-law. She's a great woman. She loves me. She's a good Christian. And that's why she voted for Trump, because of abortion. That doesn't make her a bad person. And she hated the Clintons, which is what we bonded over, actually. So.
And I should have mentioned from out of the gate, I'm well aware that Jimmy Dore is somewhat divisive in the sense that I think most people think he's kind of a grifter, like for leaving the Young Turks, and now take a more moderate, if not right-wing stance. You know, I think a lot of people suspect him of chasing money. I wasn't following this stuff as closely when he made his transition, so I can't speak on it. But again, I understand some people watching this are probably like, yeah, I mean, I don't like Cenk and Anna, but I don't put any stock into what Jimmy Dore says, which I completely understand. But all they're really talking about here is direct, tweets and quotes from Cenk and just how hypocritical they are. So if you can get over the messenger, I think they still do make a point about, Cenk and Anna's kind of 180 pivot here. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
So I was, again, 8 years ago, I was saying exactly what Cenk is saying, and it would be okay if Cenk came out. What you have to do is make a serious act of contrition. You have to come out and say, hey, you know what? I was the worst person. I did that. I demonized the right wing. I called them white supremacists. I called them all racist. I called them all sexist. There's a video where he even called them all pedophiles. He said that's why they're always talking about pedophilia, because they're all pedophiles. He said that.
Right.
He said he smeared anti-war journalists like Aaron Mate, said they're being paid by Russia. Everybody was a Russian. Everybody was a traitor to our country. Jimmy Dore was a right winger and a grifter because I interviewed a Boogaloo boy. Meanwhile, he interviewed David Duke. I guess he still got to be a lefty, but he's not a lefty. He's a union buster, and he's pro-war, and he's pro-censorship. And he's pro-big pharma. Right? He didn't have one critique of the COVID narrative. So that's the opposite of a lefty. Cenk Uygur is an authoritarian and he's illiberal. He's not part of the liberal class. People who call themselves liberal today are not liberal. They're illiberal. You can't be pro-war and you can't be pro-censorship, the hallmark of a dictator and authoritarianism, and you can't be for mandating medical treatments. And so they're the opposite of liberals. They're not liberals. They're illiberals. And so if he was genuine about this, he would start off with an admission that he was the worst purveyor of the thing he now claims to be against, demonizing Trump voters as their enemy. He was the worst who did that, constantly calling them fat. Up until 5 minutes before the election, he was calling them all fascists, including Trump. And then, so it's amazing how he's Trump's a fascist. We got to defeat MAGA. Those guys are, and then all of a sudden Trump wins. He's like, we win.
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
How does that, it'd be like if I was like,
I was with you guys the whole time.
Yeah, been with you there the whole time. Oh, these assholes on the far left. Oh boy. They used to call him far left when he kind of tepidly supported Bernie Sanders until he couldn't wait to get rid of him and support Hillary Clinton. I was the last holdout for Bernie Sanders in 2016 at the Young Turks. But anyway, now he just apes the establishment. So he's just aping establishment talking points, calling people far left, calling people far right. And the right wing, a lot of them are sniffing him out. Matt Walsh didn't go along with it. He said, Cenk Uygur's been calling us fascist for 53 years. He's now 54. And now I'm supposed to think that his opinion is worth anything? He's been wrong his whole life. And so I'm with him on that. And there isn't a war that Cenk Uygur didn't like. Cenk Uygur was for the Iraq war before he was against it. He was for the Afghanistan war. He was for the expansion of the Afghanistan war. He was for the Libyan war. He was for the Syrian war. And he lied. He lied on television. He lied on the Hill, saying that he never was for bombing Syria. And there's a 10-minute video of me debating him about that, and he was for it. So he is one of the sleaziest media figures going. And there was good in Cenk Uygur, right? When I first started working with the Young Turks, there was good inside there. He would push back against the establishment. He was always pro-war. He finally, with Gaza, he finally found a war that he doesn't support. It's like, oh, hip, hip, hooray, you finally found a war that you don't support. So anyway, I know I'm talking too much, but it's got to start with him admitting was for bombing Syria, and there's a 10-minute video of me debating him about that, and he was for it. So he is one of the sleaziest media figures going.
I got to give Jimmy some credit on that one. I chuckled a little bit when he said, Cenk was like, Trump's a fascist, Trump's a fascist. Then Trump wins the election, and he's like, we won. That's pretty funny. But Jimmy just, I think, reiterated some of the things that I said. He said, if you really want to ingratiate yourself to anybody, right, that you've been at odds with in anything, politics or anything else, show a serious act of contrition. And again, I have not forgotten that he's called me sexist, racist, transphobe, any other phobe, a million times. And by the way, calling people those names, only one group does that, is the insane woke left or people that are pandering to them. But as far as a serious act of contrition, that will never come out of Cenk Uygur's mouth. And neither will an apology or humility whatsoever. I am actually blown away that someone like Cenk can walk around and have such a lack of self-awareness to throughout his career flip-flopping on all these positions, but never ever acknowledge that he flip-flops. Those would be perfect opportunities to say, hey, I got that wrong, and I'm going to try to do better and learn from it. If you don't ever acknowledge mistakes you've made, how do you grow and get better? And then Jimmy mentioned that Matt Walsh, kind of calling out Cenk like, hey, for 53 years, you've been calling us, racists and sexist and all this stuff. And when I said earlier I was a little naive, that Matt Walsh piece is one that started to make me rethink, like, I need to be a little more leery of folks that have been, bashing literally me personally and the party that I associate with for years, and now is like, hey, maybe we can find some common ground. Anyway, but we want to hear from you. What do you all think? Is Cenk Uygur's sudden pivot a grift, or is there some authenticity to it? And then same question for Anna Kasparian. Anyway, that's it for this video. As always, we really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.